Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Sindhu Bloom. Executives are anticipating tax policy changes this year, and navigating those changes will be challenging. How are these challenges being addressed in the private equity space? Joining me to talk about that is Puneet Arora. Puneet, welcome.
Happy to be here, Sindhu.
All right, so let's dig into the future a little bit. So when you think about private equity firms and the portfolio companies, what role does tax play in their business decisions looking into the future?
That's I think the scope of this discussion is certainly growing, and it's very encouraging for us tax professionals. So if you talk to the business leaders, they're all very optimistic about their businesses and the growth with respect to those businesses. However, it is not lost on the business leaders that there is a lot of tax change which is likely to come in the next few years. Not all of it is bad. However, the expectation with respect to increased tax rates clearly is something that they want to take into account with respect to their planning for the future. Now, when you think about what businesses will have to do coming out of this post-COVID world, frankly, some of them are already coming out of it or well on their way, is they have to think about their businesses differently. Location of their people, alternate supply chain. And so what that does is when you're looking at those scenarios, it is important to make sure that you're thinking about the tax sensitivities with respect to those scenarios in real time. And so one thing which you'll hear us say a lot about is doing the modeling with respect to the scenario plannings. So when you try to weave in what is your tax posture today, what are the tax attributes, what are some of the things that you are sensitive to today, and what will the organization look like in the future, you have to make sure you're appropriately taking this into account. There's also the aspect of when you go and locate in a particular jurisdiction, let's say particularly a jurisdiction where there's a large unemployment and a business makes a decision that they would want to move in that jurisdiction, not only to encourage employment, but seems to be a place where they could get a lot of good talent to grow their business in the future. It's important to understand what are some of the local incentives potentially that are available to themselves as a business and to the people that would be part of that business or the employees that they will have in the future. So you put all this together, and then you sort of look at and say, what does the tax law look like today, and what is it likely to look like in the future? Obviously, multiple levers, not all of them are likely to come into play, but that's where the scenario planning and modeling becomes extremely important to make some really good, well thought out business decisions and what often referred to as no regrets planning.
So, Puneet, I want to get a little bit more granular in terms of what companies are doing and what steps they can take. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. As I mentioned, when I talk about scenario planning, it's all about the modeling. So when you do the modeling, you look at each of the levers and say what impact does it have with respect to your projected sort of returns, with respect to your business decisions. And so what it does, it helps you think that through well, and you can calibrate your thinking based on and your projected returns based on what those if those scenarios were to come to fruition, what that would mean. So it's just better informed decisions, and it actually allows tax to play a more active strategic role in those decision making processes, as opposed to at the back end looking at what the potential impact is going to be. So the modeling piece is what I would reinforce, being the real driver, and frankly a key part of the no regrets planning.
Okay, so modeling a key component. Now, going back to your points about supply chain and location of people, those have been, disrupted over the past year or so. So as businesses are moving forward and working on those issues, what are one or two things that you are seeing companies do or would recommend companies do?
Yeah, I think the one or two things which companies need to think about is, as they're looking to replace, or grow or replace supply chain, it's very important to think about what does it look like holistically, and are you able to access um, any incentives that are being offered, by a local government? Are you When you do that, does that look a whole lot different in terms of your footprint? what does it mean with respect to your intellectual property? And so the one of the key things is when you look at, not to look at these extensions or these things as a standalone, but what is the what how does it tie back into the organization? And what we've seen is a lot of the discussions around are not only what do you do in coming out of this post-COVID world to grow, but how does that impact the rest of the organization? So that would be one thing. The other piece of it is thinking about your employees and where will they work and what will they do and what is the impact with respect to operationally, but also from a tax footprint perspective, because everyone's talking about the employee location, whether it's a hybrid model, whether it's multiple offices, whether it's going back to an office in a completely different location. So it's very important to see what the impact of that new employee model, the technology overplay, because clearly the distinction is a lot of the things are being automated, and so where is that technology being developed? What does that do for the overall function? So those need to be considered. So I'd say the two key things are making sure that your incentives, you've thought about those and understand those well, and then the other piece of it is that the people and the technology piece. How does that fit in the future, and what does it mean with respect to the footprint of the organization?
All right, Puneet, it's great to see you and have you back on the show. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Cindy. Thank you.
And thank you, as always, to our viewers for spending this time with us. We'll see you next time.